Howdy YouTube pards, Jack Spade here with High Noon Leatherworks back at you. And today we're going to do our next episode on the Hand of God holster. We're going to start doing some beveling and some stamping on our carved image. And I hope you all had a Merry Christmas. And we'll get started. I'll pull you in here closer and stay tuned. All right, we'll get started on this. And the first thing, we're going to use 7 different tools, stamping tools, after I've done my carving. And what that's going to do is going to start giving this design some depth, make it pop out, make a little 3D looking image to it. And also, it's going to really make it pop, and we'll do some stamping around the edges. So I'm going to use 7 different stamping tools. I'll explain each one as I get ready to use them, and then it'll probably be within the next 2 videos, so I really doubt if I'll be able to do this whole thing in one video, so we'll probably split it into 2. So the first tool that I'm going to use is I'm going to use this beveling tool. And the beveling tool, it does have a little bit of dotted design on it, very, very small, but it's thicker on one end than it is the other, hence the bevel. And what that's going to do is I'm going to go around the outsides of all my cuts, and I'll kind of tap that in as I go around, and that's going to give us some depth. So I'll go ahead and get started on that. Maybe do just a little bit and kind of show you what that's going to look like, and then I'll speed it up for you because it's going to take a while to do all that. So you want to lightly tap, kind of move your tool as you're tapping, and what that does is that really gives it definition on those edges. And you may want to move your leather a little bit as you go. Some people like to lighten up on the tapping as they move to the outside, or like on a stem. I'll show you that in a minute. If you get into a stem, what you can do is lighten up your tapping as you get close to the end of that stem, and it puts more depth in it. So what you're doing is you're using that beveling tool to add depth to one side of that cut where you carved in there with your swivel knife. And you can go to the last video and had some swivel knife carving in it. You want to go fairly slowly. Remember, you don't want to tap outside of your swivel knife areas, because that will make a permanent indentation in that leather. And I did case this, by the way, off camera before I started. So I did wet it down one more time and then let it come back to its natural color before I started doing my beveling. Sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. And it does have a lot to do when you're beveling, also with the angle of your beveler or your beveling tool. So the angle will determine the depth, how deep you actually are beveling into your cut groove that you cut in with your swivel knife. And you can see what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep all my bevels to the outside. Let me do a few more here on this, and I can kind of give you an idea of what the depth is starting to look like a little closer into the camera. Again, I'm not tapping it real hard. I'm just giving it very light taps as I keep moving my beveler. That's the key, is to keep moving your beveler as you're tapping so that you get nice, even bevels and you don't get hard bevel marks, so that you can see every single place that you actually struck the leather with your bevel tool. So the key is to try to keep it moving the whole time and keep your taps on your hammer, your mallet. You want to try to keep those as even as possible, because obviously the harder you tap that, the deeper that bevel is going to go into that leather. There's nothing saying you can't go over it again a little bit to give it a little more definition if you'd like. And again, you can lighten those taps up, like toward the outside or toward the center, however you want to do your detail. And they do make different beveling tools. They make wider, narrower beveling tools, just depending on what you're actually looking for. Again, the depth of how deep you want that actual bevel is going to be determined by how hard you hit your mallet, swing your mallet. So you can tell right now I'm just barely tapping that. I'm just putting some definition on a couple of spots there. Alright, let me show you what I've got so far. And you can see we're starting to get some definition in these areas that I've beveled compared to down here where I haven't done any beveling. So stay tuned. I'll go ahead and bevel this, the rest of the pattern, and then I'll come back. Alright, I've been all the way around the design now with the beveler, and now I'm going to use the camouflage tool and put some definition on the flowers and the stem, the leaves, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. And I'll lightly tap as I begin and keep it tilted up a little bit so I'm not putting the full effect. And as I go up, I'll hit it a little harder each time and actually flatten it out so the camouflage tool actually gets a little deeper and a little bigger each time. So it's going to put a lot more definition in there. And as I turn the corner, I want to take up as much space as I can. And you can see inside that now what that camouflage tool does. So I'm going to do the same on this one. And again, now these tools that I'm using are for definition. It's going to start giving a lot more definition to the design and the flowers. See the camouflage tool on that one. So I'll just do a little more camouflaging, then I'll show you what I end up with at the end. Okay, you can see now that camouflage tool starting to put some neat definition in there. The next tool I'm going to use is called a pear shader, and it's shaped like a pear, and it does have some little dimples on it. So this can create some shadows. And it also creates a little depth. So the harder you hit that with your mallet, the deeper that pear shader goes in, the darker the shadow becomes. and the deeper that pedal looks like it's divoted in. And I'm doing that on some of the pedals on the flower, a little bit on the inside, but not where I used the camouflage. I'm trying to stay away from my camouflage tool in there. And then I'll use the pear shader also going up the stems. And let me go ahead and do some more pear shading, and then I'll come back. So then the next tool we're going to use is we'll do the cedar tool, and all that is just makes it look like a little seed, and we'll do that in this pod area here. First place, and I'll hit one right in the center, and then I'll move out from there and go around that. And then what that does is that makes it look like it actually has seeds in the pod. So we're really starting to give it a lot of definition. It's a pretty good sized flower up in that corner. So we're going to do the next tool is called a backgrounding tool. And just like it's named, it does the background. So anywhere you're going to have a background area that might be dark, or that's going to show that maybe the flower's laying on something, that's where you want to use the backgrounding tool. So down here in this area, again, you kind of use it like you do the beveling tool. Just going to lightly tap it as you move it around, and what that does is that flattens out that area of the leather. And it does have small dimples on it also. Hopefully that's enough where you can see down here at the bottom where it makes it look like that's the flat surface that it's on, or the background. So I'll go ahead and do a little more backgrounding here. Doesn't look like there's a lot, and then I'll come back. Okay, as you can see, there's not a ton of backgrounding on this. This particular design doesn't have a lot of backgrounding on it, but you can see the backgrounding I did. It's very small in detail. Some here, down here at the bottom. Next thing we're going to move on to is called a Vayner stamp, and there's what that looks like. And then we're also going to come back after that and we're going to use a mule's foot. So on this design, it actually goes around the outside of the flower design, the carving. So I'll start, let's start up here in this corner. It's where I started my carving also. And then we don't want these veining punches to actually touch. So we'll leave just a tiny space between each one of them. Can I show you that? That way we can come back and place our mule's foot in there. And I'm putting it just on the edge of my beveling on that outside mark, that outside guideline, so that I'm not smashing down all my beveling that I've already done. And then I'm going to go around the corner on this one. Normally I'd try to keep that square, but this is a rounded Vayner punch. And you'll see the difference here because this one's going to meet up on the square. So it went around the corner on this one right here, but this one is going to end up being square. I'll finish this up, then I'll come back and show you the mule's foot. Alright, so there I have the Vayner stamp all the way around. You can see how the design's really coming together now. It's getting some depth in it. Come back with the mule's foot. And I've used the mule foot two different ways. I'll either use it right side up on the pointed edge or right side down with the hoof part. On this one we're going to use the pointed outside, so we'll go between each Vayner again, I'm going to keep it off of that line just a hair. You can see I'm going to put a mule's foot stamp right between each one of those veins. So I'll finish this and I'll come back. Alright, so I've got the mule's foot in between each one of the veiner stamps. It's really coming together now. You can see the depth in the carving and the stamping that I've done on the flower. And that's pretty much that part on the stamping and the carving on the holster itself. Now I still have to do the hold down, this piece here, and basically this just gets the veiner and the mule's foot to match the outside of this, and I'll show you doing that also. We'll probably do that on the next episode, and that'll kind of wrap that part of it up. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Hope you had a Merry Christmas. I hope you have a Happy New Year. And then come back right after the New Year and I'll have the next video up on the Hand of God holster. So please, as I always say, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.